Pero,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Al Ritmo de Dios, to the rhythm of God. Today we have a special episode because we will be having it in English. Wow. So, all the English speaking people there, this is for you. And also for those who are speaking in Spanish, it's nice also to learn new languages. So, this is some example of your training to speak English. And not only that, we are speaking in English in this episode that this is special, but because we also have a very important guest. We are very happy to have with us our very own president of the Verbum Dei missionary family. Welcome, Anne
Thank
Healy.
you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for accepting our humble invitation to be with us, to know you more, and to share with you. Let us begin. We would like to know who is Anne Healy. Would you mind to tell us some stories of your childhood and youth? What were those moments that have marked you as a person and that have made you who you are right now as Anne?
Well, everyone knows me as Anne, who's Irish, but I was actually born in London, in England. We moved from London when I was 1 year old to little villages. I lived in two different, very small villages where we had a cow, ponies, because my sister was and still is. She works with horses still, but even as a child, we had ponies for my sister, chickens, cats, dogs. We grew our vegetables, so that was how I grew up. When I was about 10, my parents, who are both Irish, always wanted to go back home. So we started when I was about 10 to sell up everything and prepare to move back to Ireland. So by the time I just turned 12, I started to live in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So that's something people might not know about me. We lived in my dad's dream. He worked in a bank for 30 years, but his dream was always to be a farmer, which is why we always had these animals. And so when we went back to Ireland, he bought his little plot of land and became a farmer in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of Ireland. My mum is from West Ireland and my dad is from East Ireland, so we ended up in the middle, to keep everybody happy. And then so there I continued to grow up with the cows and the chickens and the cats and the dogs and growing our vegetables. So probably something that marked me about that was a whole question about identity. Because when I was in England, I was always the Irish girl. Like I grew up with a very strong identity from my parents of being Irish. And England is multicultural anyway, so people tend to say, even if they were born in England, they identify a lot with wherever their parents came from. So I grew up as the Irish girl. And when we moved back to Ireland, and I say move back to Ireland because that's the way we learn us, even if we weren't born there, to say we moved back home. Then suddenly with my English accent and my English customs, which I also had I had a very good mixture of English and Irish culture, I was suddenly the English girl. Which was a huge shock to me. So that really marked my childhood, and also because there's a history between England and Ireland. Ireland was invaded by the Protestant English, and it was a very, very hard time. Like Ireland was always invaded, but when it was Catholics, they just integrated. And then suddenly everyone was Irish again, but it was very different with the Protestant invasion. There wasn't that mixture, so the history is very hard, and there's a lot of resentment. So I grew up in secondary school in Ireland, hearing in history and in geography about how bad the English were. But having lived outside of Ireland before and having very close English friends, I didn't accept. I didn't take that in, but it made me very aware of other people taking in how bad the English were. And it made me perhaps be very ashamed of that part of me that was English, that had absorbed this English culture. I remember my aunt coming to visit us one afternoon, and I was doing my homework at the kitchen table, and my mum and my aunt were chatting, making tea, and my aunt looked over to me and said, "Poor thing, having been born in England."
Poor thing.
So on one hand, it made me ashamed of that part of me. It made me reject that part of me. And on the other hand, I was very rebellious against judging other cultures so quickly. It also made me aware that we absorb an awful lot of judgments in our education systems about our neighboring countries. I don't think Ireland is the only one that does that. I think every country feeds their children a cultural story. And it made me a little bit skeptical about stories that I would be fed, which might be at this stage of my life in an international community, perhaps some kind of advantage. But it was something I struggled with for many years, was cultural identity. And at one point, I even rejected both identities and said, I'm a child of God, and the rest doesn't matter. So, yeah, I think that's probably the event. Moving to Ireland was probably the event that most marked my childhood. No, the biggest thing that happened to me.
That was very interesting because in a way, as young as you were, you realized that we criticizes people we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, well, it has been invaded by the English people like some years ago, but the situation has changed a lot. The people
Exactly.
are different. How come we continue to judge them as the last generation was? So in a way, I see that, maybe it has also made you open to more cultures in more stories and perspectives of different nationalities, of different people. And of course, above all, we realize that we are all children of God. That's a very interesting part of your life. We didn't know that. I didn't know about it. Actually, now we are also studying about Protestantism, about the Protestants. And how were you affected as well by this culture about Protestants? Were there any kind of influence in you as well in your country?
Yes, I would say there was. It was when I was growing up. It was beginning to change. But the time of my parents, for example, it would have been unthinkable for a Protestant and a Catholic to marry, for example. There was a huge distance. In North Ireland, it's still very much a problem. In the Republic of Ireland, where I'm from, it's much more acceptable, especially now. But when I was growing up, it was still a little bit of an issue. The Catholics would be very suspicious of the Protestants, and the Protestants, for that reason, would probably be a little bit aloof and live among themselves. But at the same time, one of our neighbors they were Protestant, and we got on very well with them. So then again, you get this sense of, on one hand, you're fed a story that they're some kind of strange creatures in some way, and the life experience shows you that actually they're just normal people that may have different beliefs and different customs. But the stories can sometimes stop us from being curious about the other person.
And going to the another side of the story help a lot to
Yes.
see the bigger picture about
Yes.
the reality. Do you have any siblings, brothers and sisters?
I do. I have an older brother and sister, and I also have an older half brother.
Older half brother.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were born, or you grew up with the cows, with the chickens.
Yes.
It was a very humble beginning, I would say. And as you continue to grow up, did you have like a dream of being someone? What kind of dream you had before when you were young?
I think my one of my dreams was to be an architect.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I liked technical drawing in school. I wasn't great at art, but technical drawing was really, I really enjoyed it. And I think I saw some program on TV where architects were helping in a poor country. I don't even remember which country it was, to build housing. And I thought, oh, that would be a great thing. And that was where I got this idea to be an architect, and then maybe go someplace where I could help build housing for people in need.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You know, my little sister, is an architect.
Okay.
And she really loved the Sagrada Familia, the architecture of the
right.
Sagrada Familia. It's
Yeah.
precious, really.
Yeah.
So did you pursue this dream?
No.
No?
I probably didn't have enough art to have ever got in, but my dad was very against that project because he kept saying architects don't get jobs. So, which in Ireland is probably true. It's a very, 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 very competitive, it's a small country with not many people, so there's not that many jobs. So it was probably a good thing that I didn't pursue that.
Okay. So what kind of job or career did you pursue when you were studying in the university?
Yeah. I think, well, I had one thing was I was also interested in psychology, again,
Okay.
with the whole thing of helping people. Again, my dad was a little bit, psychologists are all crazy, all go crazy, which probably isn't true. But anyway, and the other thing was that my older brother, he's 8 years older than me, and has always been someone that I've really respected and admired and looked up to, and as a child idolized. And I still love and respect my brother very much. And he's studied computer science. But it was a passion of his from as long as I can remember. And when the first kind of 1K home computer came out, which was like, I don't know, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and had 1K of memory, and no ROM, just RAM, like no. And he had to have it, and we would both sit there and type in little programs where we could play little games. So that was it's kind of an inherited passion. Wasn't really my passion, I think, but I think it suits my way of thinking. It suits my aptitudes. So I ended up studying computer science in university. Wow. Yeah.
I didn't know about that. It's quite funny because I studied computer science.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Gosh, we have more in common.
That's good to know. Then I studied as a computer science, and I work as an IT. I like programming.
Yeah.
Like a little bit nerd mode of me, nerd part of me. So you studied computer science in the university.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you continue it? Did you finish it, or did you?
I finished. It was a 4-year degree.
Okay.
In Trinity College in Dublin, and I worked for about 2.5 years in a bank in the trading department, where they buy and sell money. And then I changed to a supermarket. I started my own consultancy company and worked in a supermarket.
Wow, you had your own business.
Yeah, but that didn't last very long because God it was part of my search, actually, was starting the business. And I realized it wasn't what I was looking for.
Okay.
So
what kind of job did you do in the bank, like programming or?
Yeah, it was supporting it was a systems analyst.
Okay.
So it was in kind of developing and developing systems. That was a lot of. So we were developing a system to help particularly in one trading element, which is options, just type of a trade that you can do. So I had to learn all about options. So it was to develop a system for the traders to trade options. There's loads of other different types of trades, but this system was specifically for them to do options. And so it was like you have to interview people, you have to see what they need, what they want, you have to learn what the options are, how the system should work. Do we develop it ourselves or we buy one? And we ended up buying one. So that was what I did in those 2 years, was to develop that system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you also into some coding
Yeah,
during those
yeah,
time?
yeah.
Like what kind of programming languages? Like COBOL or what? During
My
that time?
the main one I used was C.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think
So
this is a nerd conversation because also I work as a systems analyst.
okay.
So I was working with the managers, asking them what they want, solutions for their system, and then later on the team of programmers to work together to code and all of this quality assurance, releasing the project and all of this
Right.
system development life cycle they call it. That's very interesting too. I'm really right now very emotional. Yeah.
Well,
So that was a good job, and I
yeah.
believe it gave you a lot of money too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
especially during those time where IT was booming or
Yeah.
starting, and then
It
you
was 91 I started
yeah,
working. Yeah.
wow, there was no Windows XP yet.
No, no, no. There was Windows, but way before XP, it was like Windows 4 or something. Yeah. No internet.
Okay. You mentioned
So
about this search. So you were working, you had a good job, you had a
yeah.
good career, you had a good salary. So what happened?
Yeah. Good question. At that stage, I was an agnostic. You know, I grew up in a Catholic family, Irish Catholic family. We went to church every Sunday. And when we were in England, sometimes we had to drive quite a way to get to a church. And my parents were very faithful with that, with going to church on Sunday. But the rest of the week was no, no. And when it came to do my first communion and my confirmation, my mother, whose experiences of church had been, you know, if you don't know your catechism, you get beaten, you know, back in Ireland in what would it have been the 1940s. So she didn't want me to experience that. She didn't realize that had completely changed. This was just after Vatican II. Yeah, I was born in 1970, so it was literally just after Vatican II, and things were changing a lot. I think there was a move from this old Catholic, you know, beat the catechism into the children to much more open, but that wasn't really developed. So I was kind of a child who was between my parents and that the church didn't really know what to do anymore with children. Ended up having very, very little preparation for the sacraments. Like I didn't know what confession was until 2 years after my confirmation. I thought it was where the priest got dressed, you know, because the sacristy was actually the confessional in the church we often went to. So it said confession on the door, and I used to think, oh, the confession is where the priest gets dressed in his robes. Didn't realize it was where people said their sins. So that was my formation. Having said that, when I was 12 or 13, I had a very strong search for God. I guess it was the change of atmosphere as well, because England is quite secular, but Ireland, especially back then, was very Catholic. So arriving there at 12 years old, it really woke something up in me, and started a search. So at that stage, my catechism was all over. So it's like how and religion in the school wasn't a subject as such. It was something they had a few classes on, but there was no exams, there was no, and a lot was kind of taken for granted that you learnt it at home anyway. So I asked my mum one time to teach me to pray the rosary, and she said, oh, you don't want to learn that, it's boring. So then I just insisted. In the end, she gave me a rosary and a book and said, learn it yourself. And I had an experience there which was actually really scary for me, because I sensed the presence of Mary. And I got really scared, thinking, oh, I'm going to get locked up if people think that I'm experiencing some kind of supernatural being. So I didn't do that again. So I did read the Bible. I read the New Testament from start to finish, which took about 2 years, from 15 to 17. And I found Jesus just amazing. But with my lack of formation, it was very hard for me to identify the gospel with the church. And I started looking at people, seeing, well, what does it mean to live as a Christian? Not really seeing
Mhm.
very Christian attitudes, especially in the priests. The priests were like rich. Like my neighbors, one neighbor didn't have electricity in their house, and the other neighbor didn't have running water in their house. Nobody had a telephone, and the priest had a racehorse, joint owner of a racehorse with a dentist, and a big house and a big car. Very little interest in pastoral work. We always thought there was something wrong with the microphones because we could never understand him. And then at Christmas, only at Christmas was there a lay reader who read the first reading and the second reading. And then we suddenly realized when we could actually understand her that the problem wasn't the microphones. So it's like, so my image of priests and church was very limited, very poor, let's say. I'm sure he was a good man who did his best, but I suppose with the ideology of a teenager, I expected a lot more. I don't know if I expected sandals and long hair even, maybe, I don't know. But the other thing that happened was I wanted to be like Jesus, and I found it impossible. I wanted to love like Jesus, I wanted to be like Jesus, and it was just impossible.
And why did you find it impossible?
Well, because I was doing it from my own strength and my own will. And I hadn't grasped the concept of a relationship with God. For me, prayer was saying the Our Father, acting holy, trying to be holy, but not.
Probably a lack of a community also.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
Christians who are willing
Yeah.
to also do the same like what you were doing.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I did try to join a prayer group, but it was, the town was 10 kilometers away. So my parents would have to pick me up again. And they said that there were more important things. When I finished school, I could join a prayer group if I wanted to, which I did when I went to university. But I had a lot of blows. I mean, I can't go into all the details. We don't have much time for that. But a lot of blows, which really left me disillusioned with church and with religion. And so I became agnostic. My last 2 years of university, I lived as an agnostic because I wasn't close to the fact that God existed, but I thought if he did exist, he was irrelevant and had no power, which isn't really much of a God. If he doesn't have power to do anything on earth, then if he exists, this doesn't matter. It's kind of irrelevant to me if there's no. So then when I'd been working for about a year, it's going to be it's a bit weird what happened to me. I don't know if you know the film Pretty Woman. It's an old one.
Well, I know the song Pretty Woman.
Yeah, well, that comes from a film from my time as a young person. And this is the times of VCR. You know, these big thick things that you put into a video recorder. So and you had to rent it at a store. You know, streaming was not a thing at that stage, obviously. So we rented this VCR of Pretty Woman. And now we were watching, it's a really nice film, actually. It's really, really quite good. And it's a classic, so I would recommend watching it. It's quite good. But there's a line where, and I looked it up earlier on, because I thought we might be talking about this. So, yeah, there's Vivian. Vivian is a prostitute who ends up with this rich man, Edward. So Vivian, who's played by Julia Roberts, asks Edward, who's played by Richard Gere, what does he do? What's his job? And basically his job is to take companies that are in trouble, break them up into pieces and sell them for a profit.
Okay. So
he, buys a very cheap company and then breaks it up and sells it for a profit. So she says to him, okay, so you don't create anything. I'm not sure if this is a direct quote, but you don't create anything. You take businesses apart instead of building them. And I was working in a trading department in a bank, buying and selling. Well, I wasn't even buying and selling the money. I was helping other people to buy and sell money. And that line had a huge impact on me because I thought, I'm no better than this guy. I'm not actually building or creating or doing anything useful with my life. I'd kind of forgotten my childhood dream of helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And it woke something up in me, that line. And it's one of the things. There were a few other things which really pushed my search, obviously, but that was the start. Was that line in that film? On some Friday evening, sitting with friends, supposedly having a good time, I ended up in a life crisis because of a line in Pretty Woman said by a prostitute. Imagine. Yeah.
That's really interesting, no? How God, in a way, worked there.
Yeah.
In that situation, like the seed of the word, we say,
Yeah.
spermaticus. And so from this moment, from this experience, I can imagine you started searching for this meaning of
Yeah.
for life and
Mm-hmm.
what to construct with your life, what to build.
Yeah.
So how was this journey?
It was tough. It was tough. I was convinced it wasn't God, the answer at first. I went on a course, paid a lot of money to go on a career guidance course, where supposedly we looked at all of our aptitudes, and did aptitude tests and dialogues and all kinds of things. And at the end, the guy said to me, "You're doing exactly what you're suited to. You're really suited to systems analyst. Your brain works that way. You're also creative, and that's you're in exactly the right job. If I was you, I would just stick it out. Lots of people end up in a crisis after a year or two." So that was like money down the drain. That's when I decided to set up my own company, because one of the things that I didn't like about working in the bank was it was a very cutthroat atmosphere. There was lovely people. If you met them outside, they'd be lovely. And then in work, they would turn into backstabbing.
Yeah.
And then I was also doing a course at night, accountancy and management. So the accountancy bit was fine, it was good for career advancement in a bank. Accountancy is a good thing to know. The management part, I used to get so angry reading these books, because they were, and I think things have changed a lot since then, but back then the management was about sounded to me, this is my interpretation at the time, was how to manipulate people into working better, how to get more out of people as if they were objects. If you put this in, you might get more out, So I used to get really angry without really knowing why. And my manager was doing a management course, and I could see him applying all the things that I was learning on us. And I'd be like going, you're trying to manipulate me now into being a productive person. And I used to get so angry at this kind of objectifying people as tools, almost like, how to get your car to work better and smoother. It's how to get your worker to work better and smoother, so you can make more money. And I just kept getting angry all the time with this without really knowing what was missing. And I read a book called The Road Less Traveled. That was one by Scott Peck, which is a very famous book, which speaks a lot about love and love being a missing thing. So that was the first step for me, was this book by Scott Peck. And I was like, that's what's missing. We should be loving each other. So you can imagine going into this cutthroat environment in a bank, trying to tell people we should be loving each other. It's like not happening. So yeah, so I thought if I could start my own company and be my own boss and create this environment which is based on love, this would be so cool.
Yeah, that's true.
That would be so cool. So yeah, that I started the company and I got my first contract. My boyfriend and my brother were the two other directors. You need 3 directors. So I was a director, and my brother and my boyfriend were the other 2 directors. And I got I was the only worker at that stage, but I had great plans. And my first contract was with a supermarket. And I thought, supermarket, that's creative. That's, building society needs to eat. And I went there, and it was a bit better. it wasn't as cutthroat as the banking environment was, and this trading environment especially. But it wasn't what I was looking for. I realized that it wasn't what I was looking for. And at that time, in this time of changeover, my sister-in-law, who is, and my brother and sister-in-law are very Verbum Dei. They've known Verbum Dei for longer than me, and they introduced me to Verbum Dei since I was 17 years old. So they were continuously inviting me to retreats and things, and I would go sometimes kind of to keep them quiet, to leave me alone. If I go on one, they might leave me alone for a while. And I guess my sister-in-law probably suspected my change to agnosticism, and she used to pray for me. I think when I did decide to become a missionary, she said, like, that's not what I meant. But anyway, yeah. So that was a time when I started to open up a little bit to something else. Mm-hmm. And one retreat, I kind of found myself there because my boyfriend didn't want me to go, and out of a bit of rebellious, because we were, because I was searching for something and he didn't understand that, and I kept saying, we're not really happy, and he didn't like. So yeah, we were already in a little bit of a struggle, and so just when I said I might go on this retreat, he didn't want me to go, and I was like, well, I'm going. So yeah, which shows where our relationship was at the time. So anyway, I went. Out of rebellion, and suddenly thought to myself, what am I doing here? And I thought, in that particular retreat, decided I'm going to prove once and for all that God is not the answer. Mm-hmm. And came out the other end, but that God is the answer.
So tell us more about that.
Okay. Yeah, well, I don't know. Some people in the community will remember our dear French missionary Pascal. Mm-hmm. He had just arrived to Ireland with very little English. And Daniel de Santos had arrived as well. Mm-hmm. And his English was very good, but he just left the formation course. And so this quite poor community, poor on many levels, in the sense of, just arriving, not being situated, were giving this retreat. And Pascal, with his very difficult English, gave a talk saying, "Yeah, you're looking for happiness." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking for happiness." Yeah, write that down. I actually asked them for pen and paper, and you're looking for it in your work. Yeah, I'm looking for my work. But you're not going to find it, because his English was so bad. It was really, really simple, very clear, line by line. And you're not going to find it in your work. He had this kind of French, I can't even do it, but it was this French poo-pooing everything away. It's like, okay, there goes my job. And my new company. You're looking for it in your boyfriend, and you're not finding it in your boyfriend. So yeah, definitely not this moment. There goes my boyfriend. You're looking, and he went through my entire life, clothes, looking, whatever you could possibly think of that I had and thought that I was going to get happy from. Off it went. And at the end of that talk, I felt like he had just thrown my entire life in the bin. I was there empty, completely. He really put a name to my crisis. And I realized that all of the things that I had been filling my life with were just rubbish. I mean, they're good things. They're not, they're not bad things, but they were not what life is about. And I was there, well, he has to give me the answer now, because otherwise. So he said, well, the answer is love. And I'm like, yes, the answer is love. I've read the book. I read it in the Gospels, way back, beginning to remember what I'd read as a teenager, which I'd all completely forgotten and rejected. And I was like, but I couldn't do it. So now what? It's like, I know he's right. I know the answer is love, but I know that I can't do it. I've tried already and failed miserably. So there I was, felt like he'd just kind of left me completely lifeless, naked, or I don't know how to describe it. So the talk, the retreat went on, the encounter. There was a missionary who'd come over from England who gave a talk on eternal life, which I didn't understand at all. She gave some examples where I thought, well, of course, didn't know. I just didn't get it at all. And then there was a talk on prayer, and Daniel de Santos, who had been from an atheist background, talked about again in very, very simple terms. So anybody who thinks that preaching has to be complicated, it doesn't. It's the simpler the better, because that when I finally understood was when it was really, really simple. So he spoke about just how he had been invited on a pilgrimage, had gone into this chapel and experienced the presence of God. And I was like, oh, you can experience the presence of God? How come nobody's ever told me this before? And they probably have, but I didn't get it. So in that talk, he spoke about, if you want to love and you can't, we can't. And I was like, yes, exactly. That's what and if we can't, it's because we're not in union with God. It's only if we're in union with God that we can love. It's like, okay, so I need this union with God. So he said, so now sit down, pray, say hello to God, speak to God. And I was sitting there going, okay, how do you do that? No idea what to do. I felt like, okay, either this is the most incredible thing in the world that you can actually experience and speak with God, or these guys are crazy and they're speaking to the walls. They're hearing voices, they're, schizophrenic, or I don't know. So which is it? And because I guess the history I'd had, the rejection I'd had of faith, it was very, very hard for me to make that step of actually opening up. I just felt I was talking to a wall. So what happened was, in the end, I gave God an ultimatum. I just got really angry and said, look, God, you have 5 minutes to prove to me that you exist, and that I can talk to you, and that you have actually got power in the world. You can act, or I'm out of here and I'm not coming back. So it took longer. God actually answered. I'm not going to say how, because I think that conditions other people too much. But God gave me a sign, very clear sign, that he was there, could speak to me, and had the power to speak to me. And it was that when I received that sign, that was when I thought, I want to be able to the sign came through a person, and I want to be able to be that sign for other people. So that was where I discovered my Verbum Dei vocation, not necessarily as a female missionary at that stage, but to the charism. It's like, I want to be the word of God, like say the words that people need to hear. So,
and to allow them, to guide them, to help them experience that personal encounter with Christ, with God.
Which is what then I ended up, doing, joining in the community, learning, going once a week to the School of the Word, and having a revision of life, and gradually learning to pray. Yeah.
So I can imagine you continued as a disciple.
Yeah.
And then what happened? How did you discover this other step of giving your whole life to God? Because as a consecrated missionary, there was this profound yes. There was this moment when you experienced that God was calling you to give your life totally to him and for everybody else.
Well, I think, first of all, I was already experiencing that my job wasn't, the work that I was doing, even though I was suited to it or whatever they might tell me, it didn't feel like I was what I should be doing with my life. That was already there. I did recognize the value of being in the world to evangelize. I could see that in my brother and my sister-in-law who were in the family Verbum Dei. So I knew that there was married couples as well. I knew there was men and women. So I did realize that there was a spectrum open to me. But on one Easter retreat, it was the first retreat I did in silence, which was like about 3 or 4 days. that was on the Isle of Wight in England. A group of us went over from Ireland to join them there. I think on Easter Friday, it was Easter Friday, the Good Friday, where we'd been meditating on the crucifixion of Jesus. I stayed long, and everyone else had gone to bed, and I was still at the foot. And when everyone else went out, I went right up to the foot of the cross and was praying there, asking Jesus like why he was there, experiencing this love, someone able to give their life right to the end, like that's what God, that's who God is. And I think it was in that moment that I said to Jesus, like, I want to be like you. I want to be able to give my life that way. And that's what, for me, consecration felt like. It feels like this sign of the love of God, giving everything, like kind of dying to the world, if you like. And that so, I mean, God knows me very well. He knows that I have to be, otherwise I might get rebellious or stubborn. So I felt it was from me asking God, can I give my life to you? I want to give my life to you. And Jesus was like, oh, we'll see. And then, but I did experience then with the resurrection, God saying yes to me. Yeah.
Like you were the one who asked, and then he answered.
Yeah. So when other people talk to me about like they feel this call and they were the ones saying, "Oh, I don't want to," I didn't
Experience the contrary.
I didn't experience that because I think God knows that I don't work that way. So
you're more like active, responsive.
Yeah.
Talking about giving your whole life to God, this desire. There is this song. I'm not sure if it's yours, but I have heard about that song that you have sung that song. He gave himself for myself.
Yeah, that's I wrote that song.
You wrote that song. It's a beautiful song. I really suggest it to everyone.
He loved me and gave himself.
Yeah, that's true. And can you share with us this song? Can you share what is behind the letters of this song? Because I feel like it has something to do with your experience.
I wrote that song a long time ago now. It probably was about 3 years after I joined the community. I think, it was just in the first year after my formation course. And I suppose I wrote it getting in touch with this God who lets go of everything. Lets go of everything. I mean, the reading itself comes from Galatians, where Paul says he loved me and gave himself for me. And I guess it's having, you come from a world where ambition, I want to be this, I want to be that, and to be ambitious is kind of a normal thing, but the greatest ambition is to be Christ, I guess, and that's who Christ is.
It's beautiful to hear how God has worked in your life, Anne, from being a rebellious girl, contradicting everyone, what they were saying, to a girl who tried to search for Christ in the Bible and searching for a testimony of him, to a girl who became agnostic because of the lack of testimony, to a girl who was searching for love, for truth, and encountered God through prayer and became a missionary, became someone who has given his whole life for the person, for the man, for God, who gives his whole life for us. This experience of yours has inspired us so much, and now you are here. You have blessed a lot of people. God has a lot of surprises in your lives, and one of those surprises is becoming the president. Imagine the president of the whole Verbum Dei missionary family. Your new business, your way of building up, and your way of giving your life to God and to the world. How has been your experience of being elected as a president, and how are you living it right now?
Well, I suppose I could say that it was a huge surprise, and I think it was. Not just for me, maybe. I think it's like the Pope, the ones who went in and, as presidents didn't come out as presidents, and the one who didn't go in as presidents.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, I did feel like God's preparing me for it. Like I did have signs of some, which you can't, there can't be any kind of guarantee before. God gives you hints and you don't always know what they mean until afterwards. But when I look back, there was someone at one point who said to me, "Oh, I think you should be in government." At something, even if it's a councillor, but I think you should be in government. And I was like, okay, don't think that's going to happen. But then when I was praying afterwards, I did say to God in my prayer one day, that's a bit absurd, right? Me in government. So I got this urge to do Bible bingo, which I know we shouldn't do this. I know we shouldn't do Bible bingo. I know it's not a good thing. But that day I felt this urge to do Bible bingo just to see what would happen. And I opened the Bible and it opened on Sirach or Ecclesiasticus 17:3. I closed my eyes, opened the Bible, put my finger down, and it was this verse. The Lord fashioned man from the earth to consign him back to it. He gave them so many days, determined time. He gave them authority over everything on earth. So I was like, okay. I shared that with a friend of mine. We used to meet once every 2 weeks. He gave me violin classes, and then we had a cup of coffee and shared about faith and evangelizing in Lingen, where we were living. So I shared with him, this person said to me that, maybe I should be in government, and that would mean leaving Lingen. And I asked God, and this is what happened. So he was a bit, oh no, you can't leave Lingen. And first of all, and then when we met 2 weeks later, he said, I was praying about what would happen if you ended up leaving to be in the government in whatever. And God said to me that I can't be like a little bird in the nest my whole life. Then maybe it's time that I learn to fly on my own. And I was like, okay, that wasn't... I didn't know what to make of that. Then when we were, for the Congress, the missionaries would know, and lots of the family of Verbum Dei will know that we did conversations in the spirit locally. So they invited us to bring in people from, different walks of life and different types of contact with the community. And we had contact with a Mennonite couple who we'd done some work because they come from Paraguay and work in the hospital in Lingen. And with them, we'd set up a mass in Spanish for people that they had encouraged to come from Paraguay to work in the hospital, who were mainly Catholic. So even though they were Mennonite, they wanted to set up this Catholic mass for their people. And so, yeah, we'd had a lot of contact with them, and they were really lovely people, very missionary. So we thought, well, why not invite them to the conversations in the spirit? So they came and they asked us, we're not Catholic, what is a Congress? What is Verbum Dei? Who gets elected? Why? And they had all these questions. So we explained, the whole structure of our community, what a Congress is. So that was fine. We had a beautiful conversations in the spirit. Lots of things came out, lots of possibilities. And at the end of the meeting, the two of them approached me, and the man said, I think you should be president. So I was like, yeah, Mennonites don't understand. So anyway, after a time, it was I got elected to go to the Congress, and I was speaking to them on the phone about something completely different, and some activity. And they were saying, oh, so now you're off to this Congress. And I was like, yeah. And he said again, don't forget, you should be president. And I was like, yeah. And then he noticed something. He said, "You're close to this, aren't you?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." So we had this conversation about me being closed. And he said, "No, you really need to open. You have to be open to the Spirit."
Wow. He was a prophet.
It was yeah, but also very spiritual people. They're really incredible. You know, they pray every day with each other. You know, they're very like our married couples. But yeah, so off I went to the Congress with this advice from this Mennonite couple to be open to the Spirit. And when we started the Congress, we had 2 days of retreat. And I recognized they're right. I'm finding it really hard to listen in prayer. The whole retreat was about being open to the Spirit, obviously, to listen in the Congress to what the Spirit wants from Verbum Dei. And I was like, I can't listen. So I went to confession and I confessed to the guy that I didn't want to get elected as anything. And he was like, well, that's not really a sin, don't you have anything else? And I was like, it's being a sin because I can't even pray. So how can I have more light about other things? And he saw my desperation. He's like, okay, I'll give you the absolution. It's fine. So I got the absolution and it was like a weight being lifted. So I made this kind of pact with God, as you say, the rebellious girl. Like it doesn't mean I have to say yes, right? It just means I have to be more open. And someone had said to me, of course, at the beginning, everyone's kind of joking with each other. Oh, what if you get elected president? Someone had said that to me at the dining table. And I was like, no, no. She was like, okay. And after the retreat, I found that, not many people said it to me, to be honest. Not many people approached me to see if I wanted to be president or what I thought about it. But there was one or two. And I found that it was really helpful to be able to just say to them, well, my doubts are health. My doubts are, it probably means the community closing because it means leaving one person on their own. And it's not like we have people who speak German who can just jump in and start working in Germany tomorrow. So it was really helpful also to hear the answers that people were coming up with to those things. Because I do have a kind of a weird condition, which means a special diet. And one person said to me, and you don't believe that we're going to look after you? And I was like, oh. So there were things that opened me up. But even so, like I say, it's not like all of that's a guarantee or a sign or it made me think, of course, I'm going to be elected now. It didn't. It just made me open. Just made me open to whatever the Spirit might want. There was one funny thing. I mean, I wrote down. I understood in the. I like physical symbols and stuff like that. If I find them very helpful, so I did write down on a little piece of paper. God, I'm really sorry for my resistances. Like, help me be open. And I wanted to leave it somewhere. So there's the statue here in Loiches on the hill of Mary. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm going to pray the rosary one day and I'm going to go up and I'm going to leave it there. And at first I couldn't find it because I couldn't remember where it was. I'd been here for a while. So finally I asked someone and they told me where it was. So one day I, praying the rosary, I went up and left it in this kind of a block in front of this statue and I left it in there. And then on the first day when we were going to have the elections, when the elections started, they told us we're all going to meet in the car park at 7:30 to pray the rosary. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be guidelines for prayer. We're going to pray the rosary. So we met in the car park, and where did they lead us? To this statue where my little bit of paper is there, surrounded by everyone. And I did kind of wonder, is this, I did feel a little bit like maybe God was laughing at me. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it was a huge surprise. But then when I look back, I see how God prepared me for it. Because, otherwise it would have been like a bucket of cold water over your head. But it wasn't, because there was a huge amount of preparation from the Spirit, which I understand now looking back. Like, don't think that I had all that very clear. It was, but it was something that opened me to that.
Well, it's interesting how God works in hidden ways to prepare us for the mission that He wants for all of us, that He trusts for us. So how have you been living this being president And tell us also, what are your dreams now as a person, as Anne, and also for the whole Verbum Dei missionary family?
Yeah, well, we're on the point of having like 1 year since our very first junta. So what I can say is that it's been a year of growing into the role, understanding it. It's also been a year of accepting what it means to have, you're given a certain amount of power and authority, and it's what do you do with that? Do you really try to do something with that? And then if so, how? And I think it was very hard for me to really believe that this had happened. I think there was, this, like I say, there was this whole preparation. It meant I could say yes in the moment. But somehow or other, I look at the previous presidents and they're all so strong and deep and have doctorates. And I'm like, what? I don't have this president material. Why me? Why would God want? Does God really want? It's kind of, you do wonder, did they make a mistake? Do they all have a crazy moment together? So I think in my month retreat in summer is where I can say, if you ask me how I'm living it, that was a huge moment of change, because I had a moment of just praying with Jesus, John 17, which is Jesus' priestly prayer. And there's a line which really struck me when I was praying, which says, Jesus is praying to the Father, they were yours and you gave them to me. And that was such a moment of understanding this love, that the trust and the love that God the Father had for Jesus, and Jesus grasping that love and grasping that trust and embracing this gift of the disciples that the Father has given to him. That was what I was experiencing. I love these Ignatian meditations where you enter into the scene and you try and imagine you're there. And I was like beside Jesus with this prayer. And then suddenly Jesus turned and he looked at me and he looks at the Father and says, "Oh, Father, she was yours and you gave her to me." Oh, and it was just, wow, this is just, I just felt like being held between the Father and Jesus in his love, being a gift for Jesus. The next day I found myself returning to that scene, and in this imagination prayer that I was having, I sensed Jesus offering me a bouquet, as if he was offering me a bouquet of flowers, something bound together with a ribbon, like this kind of very loving gesture from one lover to another, with this huge smile and this huge gift of love. And it's like, and then he said, "They were mine and I give them to you." And I realized it was the fraternity that he was giving to me. So that was a moment of accepting the fraternity from Jesus, and my sense was the same from the day before. It's not that God lets go, and not that but you start being part of this holding in these people in love, because they've been given to you as this precious gift, the most precious thing that, and I sense the love that Jesus and God have for Verbum Dei, the Verbum Dei family, which was a moment where I think I was able to accept and enter into God's call, really experiencing that being chosen, elected, was like also a call from God. It wasn't just a random act of humanity. So that's made me live it with a lot more sense of mission and peace. And yeah, it's been beautiful to experience just how loved Verbum Dei is by God. So I think the dreams I have now is when I received this bouquet of flowers, I also sensed that the ribbon around this bouquet of flowers, which was the fraternity, has rips and has things, and needs, but we're held together by love, the love of God, but also the sense that we often need reparation. That's, we need healing, we need growth, we need strengthening. And that's, I think, a dream I have is that we, because in that prayer is also, may they all be one. And I think to learn to live in the diversity that we're called to live in is not easy. And of course, we've grown as a fraternity, we've grown as a family. I think there's so much more, there's always so much more to be able to learn to live in diversity, but as one. And I think, we've done a lot of reflection about what does it mean to be a priest in Verbum Dei? What does it mean to be a female missionary in Verbum Dei? What does it mean to be a married couple in Verbum Dei? What does it mean to be a lay consecrated missionary in the family? What does it mean to be family in Verbum Dei? And now I think maybe it's a moment to reflect on what does it mean to be one in diversity, but one. Yeah, that's my dream. Well, God was the dream I sensed from God when I received this bouquet, was the sense, may they all be one.
That we may all be one. What a great dream, really. It is God's dream for all of us in the family Verbum Dei, in the whole church, in the whole world. Thank you so much, Anne, for inspiring us in this sharing. Do you have any last message for all of us who are listening to you right now? The whole world wants to hear what really matters into your heart, what you want to share with us.
There's so much that one could say, but I think one call that the church is launching at the moment is synodality, and I think that has a lot to do with this being one. And I think it really means learning to listen in a very deep way. Something, I always thought I was a good listener, but when I start to learn more about synodality, what it means to live these conversations in the Spirit, I realize it's not as easy as we think. I would call for all of us to learn to really listen, because this being one comes from being curious about the other person, being curious about what they have to say, because we already know our own answers. And we love to say them, especially Verbum Dei, we love to preach, so we love to give our answers. But what about learning to listen to the Spirit in each other, learning to listen to the Spirit in ourselves as well, learning to be really curious about what God is doing in our chaos, what God is doing in our church, what God is doing when things work out, being curious every day about what God is doing. And that means really listening to the Spirit in ourselves and in each other. And that's what I would really love to be able to do myself, and I invite everyone who's listening.
And it's the key. Listen. It's the key for us to be one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anne.
You're very welcome, and thank you again for the invitation. It's been great. Thank you so much. I feel lots of resonance going on here.
Thank you.
Yeah.